Hey, what's up everyone? My name's David Staub and I am here with my amazing wife.
Hi guys, this is Maegen.
So we're coming together to talk to you all and we're really excited about this. We started a company called Maegical, and the mission of Maegical is to heal the world, which I know sounds extreme. And how do you heal the world? Well, you heal the world by healing it one soul or one mindset at a time. And certainly we don't have all the answers to that. All we really have is our story, which is a pretty epic one of things that myself and Maegen have overcame, a bunch of different things. It ranges from addiction to trauma, suppressed trauma, all the way from childhood to adulthood, and a pretty incredible story that ended up leading. I'm not going to jump too far ahead. We'll get to it near the end of this episode, but it led to a pretty powerful plant medicine called Ayahuasca, which is pretty controversial right now. But before we get to that, the mission of this podcast, we want to create a platform along with Maegical through this podcast that allows people to openly talk about what they went through, what they're dealing with, and how they healed in a natural way. We firmly believe that we have this natural healing power within us that has the ability to heal. And there's different ways to heal that we don't think society and the world really puts out there. Pharmaceuticals aren't doing the job. I think there's no secret there. Pharmaceuticals and these fake ways to just mask the issue and put a Band-Aid over it, that's not genuine healing. And Maegen, if you got anything to throw in here, just jump in. But those aren't the ways to heal. And in our story, we went through and we tried everything. We tried all of society's ways to heal what we both had and what we were going through. And it just led to disappointment after disappointment. So the way what we're gonna do with this podcast, this is the first episode, so bear with us a little bit. But we're gonna tell our story, what we both went through briefly. It won't be too long of a podcast. We're just gonna hit the high points and really what helped us heal. Moving forward, we have a list right now of a little over 50 people that we're gonna be interviewing and talking to. We want to know, what is it that caused the illness or the damage or the trauma? What kind of from that damage? What happened? What kind of illness came from that? What kind of symptoms were happening? What diseases were getting created? What is it that was going on? What did you try and what didn't work? And then lastly, and most importantly, how did you heal? What was it that actually healed you? And our vision for this is to create a podcast and create a platform where millions of people can go to and listen to and look for something that could potentially, that they're going through, and they could look for advice on how to heal from it. We firmly believe we're all connected. We are all connected. And this, more than anything, we think the world needs healing right now. And it's just, it's going to it in all the wrong places. So we're really excited about this. We'll start out, I had, growing up, in my early years, I had addiction, but I'll talk about that. But really the most interesting and powerful and just beautiful story is really my wife. She's such a testament to strength and overcoming some pretty incredible things. We're writing a book right now about it, and we started a Facebook group that just garnered over 1,500 members in just the past few months, all based off of her story and just this incredible triumph over some pretty tough things. She had a lot of repressed, deep trauma, from abuse, deep abuse. Sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse from a child all the way to early adulthood. And it just started growing into these horrible pains and sicknesses and chronic illnesses. And man, we went through the ringer trying everything under the sun, every diet, everything to try and heal these things. And there were so many misdiagnoses. And anyway, we did eventually, there was a light at the end of that tunnel. There was a beautiful light, which is where we are now, which led us on a pretty divine mission of healing for the earth and all of its beautiful people and souls. Anyway, so as if I was interviewing the people we're going to be interviewing, I'm going to be interviewing my wife, Maegen. so she shouldn't feel too uncomfortable. So I'm going to be going through a few interview questions, and again, this is our first podcast, so don't go too hard on us. I'm just actually doing this on the fly here. We're just sitting in our meditation room in our house, and we just had kind of some inspired action to start a podcast and start talking. So without further ado, Maegen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Cool. So I know it's probably tough to talk about, but you've kind of explained, at this point, you've explained your story a good amount of times to people. But I'd love you just to kind of to hit the high points and low points or high points of the things you kind of went through as a child into early adulthood. I guess the stuff where the trauma occurred. From there, we'll go into how it started showing symptoms in your body within and around your body and your experiences in life. But let's start out with, what is it that actually caused all the damage?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's definitely damage from multiple things, but the ultimate root cause of everything definitely is the abuse that I suffered as a child. I went through things that no child should ever go through, and I feel very lucky to be alive, and I feel like my mom is lucky to be alive. And it's so unfortunate, because I do want to start off by saying I had an amazing family though before the abuse started. My mother had me at a young age. She was 17, and she went off to college to get her degree, and so I was raised by my grandparents, who were amazing, and all of my, aunts and my uncle, they were just like older brothers and sisters, and so like I honestly never felt like I missed out. Let me back up. I didn't have a father. My father, he ended up leaving my mother because she didn't want to have an abortion. I guess that's something that maybe he had mentioned, and she didn't want to do that. She knew, how wrong that was. And so obviously she didn't do that. I was born almost a month earlier, something crazy like that. Like, I say crazy just because I ended up being born on my father's birthday. But anyway, I never felt like I missed out on a father figure, because my grandfather was great and my uncle was just amazing. And then my grandma, oh my gosh, she was everything. So I lived with them up until third grade. I lived with them through the third grade. And then I found out, it just all happened so quickly. I found out that my mother was dating someone, and then all of a sudden, bam, was engaged and going to be married. And I was excited because I was told that I was going to have a dad. And
how old were you here?
I don't know. Math is not my thing. I don't know, whatever you are in the third grade, 8 maybe? 7, 8. Yeah, definitely around 7, 8 years old. And, all my friends, when I would have little sleepovers or whatever, or even just at school talking to other, friends, they always would say, my dad this, my dad that, and I could not ever say that. And so I was seriously so excited to be able, I was going to be able to say that, and just fit in and have that same experience that everyone else, every other normal kid was having. And oh man, unfortunately it was so bad, so bad. And it got scary, from the moment she said I do. Literally, the day that she said I do, that day, he showed his true colors, which were super evil. I honestly wanted, the best way for me to describe what I went through was demonic, honestly. And man, my poor mom, I know she was doing the best that she could. But I saw him hurt her a lot. I saw him call her horrible things in front of me, but I saw him physically hurt her. There would be times that he was an alcoholic. He was an ex-Marine. And the thing that sucked is that he was such a charmer on the outside and he was a nurse. And he was a charmer, so people that worked with him just thought he was amazing. Anyone that met him thought he was just amazing, and he was so evil. And there were times that we would be in the car with him and he would try to run off the road and tell us that he was going to kill us and like try to run the car off the road. And I was 8 years old, that's so scary, or just anything. Like he would be just so mean for anything and just beat me. I remember one time we had beets at the dinner table and I didn't like them. I mean, duh, they're beets. I like vegetables, but beets aren't one of them. And I mean, I still don't like them, but like, I didn't want to eat them. And so he got up from the table, he shoved them down my throat until I threw up. And then I got beaten for throwing up. There were just so many times that like, my mom would be like, Maegen, I would be staying the night at a slumber party or like up with a friend, and Maegen, my mom would say, hey Maegen, Mike's coming to pick you up. He's in a really bad mood, so please just don't say anything. And I was just terrified, terrified. Times that, I remember one time he was driving me to school. I was like in the 4th grade. I had the hiccups and I was about to do something, I can't even remember what it was now, but it was something like amazing that I was going to do, whether it was a school function or with a friend, I cannot remember, but I was really excited about it, whatever it was. And all of a sudden he just told me I didn't get to go anymore for no reason. And I started bawling, and then he started cracking up laughing. He was like, you don't have the hiccups anymore. And I was supposed to start my school day, Like, he was just so mean. But yeah, he physically beat me. There was one time that he left my mom at like 4 a.m. in the morning, left her like downtown Dallas, like where not a good area, where something bad could happen to her. And he came home saying that something bad was going to happen. And like, she didn't have anything, I don't think. I can't remember, like, if she had her purse. I don't think she had anything. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. He was just evil. And you know what? Honestly, like, me telling you what I'm telling you right now is not even painting the picture of how truly dark it was. But, the part that really messed me up, and I will say it was just scary, seeing the domestic violence. I would literally, not be doing what normal children my age should be doing. I would be hiding under my bed in my room, reading my Precious Moments Bible, just like begging for like safety and help. And I wasn't ever allowed to talk to me. I had mentioned earlier, my uncle was amazing, my Uncle Bruce. And Mike was my stepfather. He would never let me call him or anything. I wasn't ever allowed to talk to him, and it was just horrible. And I did get to go sometimes in the summer to still go see my grandparents, and like, I wasn't the same little girl, and they didn't know why. Like, I had a temper, and like, they didn't get what was wrong with me. But going back to what I was going to say, this is what was going on. I was also, in additionally to all these things that I'm telling you, I was being molested. And oh man, it's so crazy how the mind works, because I remember, my door cracking open. God, I can still see it so vividly. Like, it's a dark room, and then the door cracks open, and I can see the light coming in the room. And then my stepfather comes in, pulls down my pants, and starts performing oral sex on me. And I remember saying, "Ooh, gross." And he was like, "It's not gross." And then he continued. And like, the craziest thing is that I went to sleep. And that's just crazy to me. Like, how could you sleep through something like that being done to you? Like, crazy. But the mind is so, so powerful. And I did that for survival and like a coping mechanism. I disassociated. I feel like I splintered off into a lot of different things and suppressed everything, And I do remember, in my way, trying to tell my mom the next day when I could. I mean, I was never like really alone with her much, but I remember saying like, Mike was being really weird last night. And it's not her fault. She just didn't dig deep and ask the questions, because I didn't know what I experienced, but then it's crazy. Like, there's seriously hundreds of times that I went to bed with clothes on, and I would wake up completely naked, and I would be so confused, and I wouldn't know like how that happened. It was like a mind torture. Honestly, I thought I was going crazy, because I was like, am I imagining these things? And like, I don't know, just so crazy. And, and I remember like, having physical problems as a little girl, you know. I don't know the proper term, like, way to word this. I'm trying to think. So, okay, let me just put it to you this way. I had to go to a doctor when I was a little girl, and they had to look at my rectum, my anus, whatever you want. I don't know what I should say. And I had tears, and I had a lot of bleeding that would occur. And gosh, I wish at that moment it would have like been like a come to Jesus moment for my mom and for the doctor, but it wasn't. You know, they told me, you know, I had like a fissure cut or whatever, and then that was it. But it was because of the things that my stepfather did to me. And I honestly still suffer that problem to this day. You know, it can still flare up, which, you know, is unfortunate, but that is like seriously like the mildest physical symptom that I had. But like, I guess one other thing I can say just real quick, and you know, I'm not going to just go into it forever. And there's just so much more I could tell. But you know, the things that I worried about as a little girl, man, and not knowing about the law of attraction, right? But like, I remember being in like, I don't know, 4th grade, and they were teaching us in school about AIDS, HIV. And it's crazy because I'm sure none of those other kids thought anything of it, right? They were probably bored, if anything. And I was truly terrified. And I was like 24/7 in my mind worried that I was going to get it because of what my stepfather was doing to me. And that's tough to like focus on like being afraid you're going to get a disease that could kill you from something that's being done to you that you just have no control over. And so, man, it was just on so many levels such a horrible thing. And then, you know, that was the worst abuse that I've endured. I mean, he was truly so demonic and evil, but there are definitely other things that happened after him throughout life that were definitely traumatic, that definitely still contributed to physical sickness later in my life.
Yeah. No, I know about those things, and what we later realized too, you know, we've done a lot of studying from this, and we'll get into kind of what it resulted in later on in your life that you experienced. Was what the brain does during those traumatic times when it's too much, too fast for the brain, it suppresses it deep into the subconscious. So it's going on, and because it's too much for your like little mind to handle as a child, especially, I mean, this happens to adults, but especially as a child, it suppresses way down, so you don't even, just like you said, you disassociated and it shoved it into the subconscious, but it's still there. That's the scary part, right? It's still there. So thanks for sharing that. And I know that from that, you know, going on with the law of attraction, which we'll, you know, we can talk about here and there, but we'll leave that for more of a different episode. What you didn't realize was because of that fear of having that kind of person in your life, you ended up, without even knowing it, attracting somewhat of the similar person as you got older.
Oh,
Can you speak on that?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Thoughts are things, 1000%. So, let me just go in. What I can tell you is a little bit more of my traumas and tie it all back to that. So, the reason why I even was able to finally come out about my stepfather after 8 years of horrible abuse and watching my mom be horribly abused, man, I'm so scared watching that, was then we had my uncle and my grandparents, my family, we had a family friend of the family who was my uncle's best friend really all through high school and I guess college. And they like were very active in the church together, you know, and anyway, he was also someone that always was in my life starting at a young age. And any time he would come to visit, or like there was times he stayed with our family, my grandparents and my uncle, and I was always so excited to see him. Like he was like another uncle, you know, like he was so fun, and he would like play with me and like always make time for me. And man, it sounds weird because I was a child and he was an adult. But when I was in, was it 6th grade or 8th grade? So yeah, he stayed with my grandparents, and I was there. It was in the summer. And as a little girl, my uncle, and then he would too, with like the way that I would always fall asleep is they would tickle my back. And it was such an innocent thing. There was nothing to that at all. And he started doing it. And at that point I had developed breast, and then he started fondling me, and I completely freaked out when he started like touching me in places. And I remember I ran to my uncle's room and told him everything about my stepfather. Everything came out in that night, in that moment, So I don't know if I want to say I attracted that per se, but that happened, but this one I will say I probably attracted. So, you hear about abuse cases that, the person that got abused oftentimes can grow up to become an abuser themselves. Or you hear, the person that was in the abusive relationship will, end up being in other abusive relationships. They'll keep being with those type of men. And like that terrified me because I'd heard that. And I also didn't know that, like, gosh, if you focus on your fears, you're going to attract them. And anyway, that was something that I focused on for many, many years. I was so terrified of ending up being with someone that was, bad like that. And so I always was like, I will never be with someone like that. I will never be with someone like that. And then when I was 27, so in my mid-20s, I met a guy who, it's so crazy how I didn't see it coming, because he was a charmer on the outside, just like my stepfather was. He was just way better looking, but he was like very good looking. He was very charming. He would buy me flowers for no reason all the time, and like honestly, he was kind of too good to be true, at least at that time in my life. I'd never had anyone like treat me like that, like buy me flowers all the time and like, make me feel good. And man, same thing happened. So yeah, I do feel like I may have attracted that unintentionally. And he got drunk. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but we got married. I tell people that I got married, but I never had a husband because he never lived with me after we got married. I had moved to another state, which was already planned, to take a great job, and he was supposed to go with me, and he didn't. But then I was having a company Christmas party, and I was actually holding it at my home, and he got jealous, and so he wanted to show up, and he got like crazy drunk, and he completely beat the crap out of me that night. It was horrible. I remember, the party ended. He was being completely embarrassing when I'm trying to move up in this company. It's my first job out of college, and I'm doing very well, and I'm wanting to move up, and they loved me, and he was being really like obnoxious and embarrassing, and I was humiliated. And I remember telling him whenever he came home, we both came inside and shut the door, everyone's gone, and I was just like, you completely humiliated me. And it completely made him snap. And all of a sudden he accused me of cheating, and I'm like, seriously? This is my first job out of college, and it's retail, and I was working I swear 60 plus hours a week, open to close, and I was in fashion, so the guys that I did work with were gay. So I'm like, are you kidding me? I have no time to cheat on you. And secondly, it's your fault you're not living with me, crazy. And oh man, I'll give you the short version, but we're in the kitchen. Thank God he didn't get a knife. I keep looking back to that. I'm like, oh, thank God. But he got me by my hair, and he pulled me all the way from across the living room kitchen to the living room floor, all the way into the bedroom, which is very painful, being dragged by your hair like that. And then he threw me on my bed, and I remember I just bought some cream satin sheets, and he threw me on my bed, and then just started, putting my knee up into my chin, putting me in all these headlocks, and just throwing me around like a rag doll, and his nails were cutting my back, and my shirt was being ripped open, and there was blood on my sheets. And then I remember he threw me on the ground, and it knocked the wind, the air out of me. And then he got on top of me and he was just like, don't make me hurt you, just started screaming. And at that point, I was just in survival mode. And so I lied. At that point, I didn't want to say, well, at that point, what I did say was like, I love you, I'm sorry, even though I was like, he's crazy. I wanted to do anything, in hopes of calming him down. And so I was just like, please, I'm so sorry, I love you. And that actually made it worse. And he just started repeatedly like hitting my face, just like beating me. And like I had 2 black eyes that were swollen. I mean, like I was beaten to a bloody pulp. And I remember just started praying, and I believe that, I know that's what saved me. I started praying, and when I started praying, all of a sudden there was a siren that went by, and it freaked him out enough that he got off of me. And I remember that he sat on the edge of the bed that was like literally like 5 feet of that from the closet, which there was a gun. He had a gun in our closet. And he started rocking his hand. He had his hands over his head. He started rocking on the edge of the bed, and he was like, I'm going to fucking kill myself. And I was like, oh my God, he is going to kill me, and then he's going to kill himself, and that's going to be it. And in that moment, I just got up and took off running, and like I couldn't find my phone, but I saw his phone on the edge of the doorway on the little ledge thing. So I grabbed it and just took off running. My breasts were hanging out. My shirt was completely ripped open. I didn't have shoes on. No one was there to help me, which was crazy because at this point I lived in uptown Houston, in this huge apartment complex, very nice and uptown, and like there was no one to be found. And I finally hide in these people's balcony in the bushes and get my phone and call 911. I call HPD. And at that time, I also called, I couldn't remember any of my family's phone numbers. I didn't know my friend, no one's phone numbers because he had my phone, and like I didn't have anything memorized, but I happened to know my mom and my uncles. And so I called until one of them, I can't remember who it was, answered. And I spoke with my mom and my uncle, and until the cops got there. And I remember hearing, Justin was his name, and I remember hearing him run out and like looking for me. And man, he had such a dark, evil, cold eye, and just like looking for me. And eventually he left, and the cops come, and I just start taking off running towards them. I get in the car. I finally feel safe and relieved, and they're like, ma'am, is this the first offense? If this is really bad. And they're like, is there any guns? Because if there are, we will shoot him, yada yada. Long story short, my mom or my uncle had called my phone, which he answered because they didn't realize that I didn't have my phone, and he was being crazy to them. And then they hear the whole thing, like HPD bangs on the door, bust it down. They hear the phone hit the ground. Justin hits the ground, and they take him in. And I do believe I attracted that.
Got it. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. I've heard this story a bunch, especially now since we're kind of putting the message out there, because it all kind of ties in together with what all of this trauma actually creates. But it doesn't matter how many times you hear it. It's just crazy to relive it. I'm sure it is 10 times more so for you to go through it. So I appreciate you still sharing that. So this trauma, all this trauma you went through as a child, and this trauma you're going through as a young adult, this damage that's happening in your physically, but it's even mentally and emotionally, and all this trauma that is getting repressed so you can like survive. At what point did you start getting symptoms? Because at the time when you started getting symptoms, you thought, and we thought for the longest time, they were totally unrelated. So what time did you start getting symptoms? What kind of symptoms were you getting? When did all of that start happening?
So I had anxiety and I had insomnia at a young age. Literally since the moment the abuse started. Like elementary, junior high, high school, I had horrible anxiety. But in high school is when the horrible insomnia started, and I could not sleep at night. I could fall asleep easier than I could stay asleep for sure, but it wasn't on the level that it got to at a later time. But what I can tell you is I would say a large majority of the physical sickness that I started to develop was from the physical and the sexual abuse and the mental abuse that I suffered with my stepfather. However, there was I have a few other traumas that happened after that, but one in particular that it was almost like a light switch for my physical illness. It was like it was the one thing, the one trauma that after these other things that happened that like, I guess just, it was like, that's it. It was the thing that like turned that light switch and the sickness started. And it's something that like, it's crazy that I can talk about it now. I think ayahuasca helped that a lot, but for so many years, I did not speak of this. Like, best friends, did not know this about me because I was so shameful of it. I was grown up and raised in a very Christian religious upbringing, which I'm thankful for, absolutely. But there's some things that like they don't agree with, or they worry about that I'm into, that they think are too metaphysical, and I'm like, no, it goes right back to the Bible. I really believe the same way they do, essentially, and they just don't realize that 100%. But anyway, the thing that happened is I was dating a guy in college, and we'd been dating for a couple of years, and this actually happened before the incident with Justin, the guy that I was engaged to. So this is actually right before that, right before I met Justin. I was with this guy for a couple of years, and I got pregnant, and I knew it was wrong. But I was just so afraid of disappointing my family and letting them down, which crushes them, because my uncle said something that I'll never forget. And I'll tell you that in a second. But anyway, we agreed, he wanted me to have an abortion. And so we agreed to do that. And I was so worried at the time about the physical pain that was going to come with that. I had no idea the emotional pain that I was in for. I had no clue. No freaking clue. And I was sick all the time. I threw up all the time. Like, definitely had morning sickness, but it lasted all day long. I would be in class in college and have to run out of class, go to the bathroom and throw up. And it sucked. And I remember him driving me to the abortion clinic, and we had to pull over on the side of the road. I had to throw up because I was so nauseated. And, I hadn't even at that point in my life, I was young. At that point in my life, I was 20. I hadn't even been to the gynecologist yet. hadn't even ever had that experience. And then here I am having to have this experience instead. So it was very traumatic. It was painful. But man, I watched them how they just bagged it up, and like, it's sad because I do believe it's alive. Like at that point it had its fingers and toes, and anyway, that set me over the edge. That led to so much depression and so much worse anxiety. Now, I did have severe PTSD from my stepfather. Like, that was seriously horrible. But the guilt that came with having the abortion, I literally thought at that time, this is before I was super tapped in and tuned in and spiritual. I was definitely more religious than spiritual at this point in my life. And I didn't have the, like, talking to God, spirit, the way that I do now. It wasn't like that then. And I thought that God was going to, like, disown me. That, like, I would never get in heaven because I committed, that sin of murder. And man, that is when everything started. That is when all of a sudden I had food intolerances. I couldn't eat anything, I felt like, and like I would blow up. And I don't even want to use the word bloated because it was beyond that. Like, distension. Like, I looked pregnant, it looked crazy. It looked like an alien in my stomach. And like, it would stretch out so, like, it would be hard to breathe, and just so painful. And body pain, back pain, neck pain, chronically dry eyes. And yeah, that sucked. And that happened. Everything, like, I felt like anything I ate, gluten, dairy, soy, like, you name it, like, it would make me debilitated sick. And like, when I would flare up like that with the food and the inflammation, like it would last anywhere from like 9 to 11 days, and like chronic fatigue like crazy. And it sucked because like I could never make plans. Like if it was 4th of July coming up and all my friends were gonna go rent cabins and take the boat out or whatever, like, and they'd want to like plan ahead, and so I could put money in ahead and like save my room. Like I couldn't do that because I never knew, and I had a flat stomach. Like I had a great body, I had a flat stomach, and I worked out all the time, but yet I didn't know if I was gonna like be able to wear a swimsuit that day or not, because I just never knew. I just never knew how I was gonna feel. And that absolutely started, and it controlled my life. And that started right after that incident happened with the abortion. And that's when I started going to first conventional medicine, and I watched this with my mother. My mother almost died. My mother was sick too. And it all went back to the abuse that she endured, and she learned that stuff sooner than I did. But, I went to conventional doctors. I was diagnosed with lupus, Sjogren's, rheumatoid arthritis. Then another doctor would say, no, you don't have that. And another doctor would say, yes, you do have that. Another one would say, no, you don't. And like take all these horrible prescription drugs, pain medicines that just made me like a zombie, but like did not make me feel better at all. Like nothing helped. I mean, acupuncture was like the only thing that would give me relief, but it didn't prevent it from happening. It would just be something that I could go do to get a little bit of relief whenever I had a horrible flare-up. But it was expensive, and I went all these years having these mystery illnesses and no one could figure them out. And so then I started going to like holistic doctors, homeopathic doctors who were like way more expensive, and spend so much money with them. And yeah, I would maybe get a little glimmer of hope here and there, but yet no, none of them truly helped me either. And this went on, like, I'm talking like, was chronically ill for 22 years and was like, oh my God, like I hated it. It was a horrible thought, but like the thought I had was like, oh my God, I'm going to die and no one's going to know what I had and have until like, did they do my autopsy? Like that was a fear, which, oh my God, I'm so glad that didn't happen now that I like know how the universe works, and I was like focusing on that. But that was definitely a scary thought that I had.
Got it. Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot. It's so much to go through for the mind, and so many things that your conscious and subconscious mind had to go through, and all that repression, and you're having all these mystery illnesses, and you can't figure it out, and they put you on, and because of you had pretty intense constant anxiety in your mind from all the stuff as a child. Your day constantly was an anxiety. Is that right? Oh
yeah, absolutely. I didn't know what it was like to live without anxiety. I was a chronic nail biter. I started biting nails when the abuse started in like the 4th grade. I started biting my nails, and like I've been talking biting like till the point I had no nail. Yeah. And I was always so ashamed. Like I didn't want people to look at my hands, but like it was just I couldn't control it. I tried everything. My family tried to help me with everything. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard, but I definitely and I also went to therapist. I did go to therapy throughout the years. That never helped. I went to Christian counselors. I went to regular counselors. I went to psychiatrists who put me on crazy medicines. I went to, you name it. I did it, and none of that helped. None of it.
Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, and at that point, because the anxiety was so bad, it was a Christian counselor actually that put me on Xanax. Mm-hmm. No, it was Klonopin. And then eventually, after 10 years of taking Klonopin, and keep having to raise the dose, it would not work really anymore. So then they switched me to Xanax because I couldn't just get off the Klonopin because I had like physical withdrawals. Like they were like debilitating sick. And so then I was on Xanax for another 10 years after that. And that is the only way I could cope though in society and sleep and wake up energized.
So trying to paint the picture for you, all that happened, all that horrible trauma, mystery illnesses coming up, constant anxiety. So of course, society's ways, go to the doctor and get put on a prescription med like Xanax. So 10, 15, 20 years on Xanax. Now putting the career stuff aside for a second, how did you get your mindset out of being able to attract me outside of the same guys?
So I mean that's.
Or did you want to go back? Is there more you want to talk about back then?
I don't know. I had something, but now I think I lost it. So, all these things happened, and then I will say one other thing happened. I'm not going to go in depth on it, but I did meet my biological father when I was 35.
That's right.
And it was weird. It'll be in the book, more about it. But I felt like he kidnapped me in a sense. Like, sounds weird. But like at first I was excited again about him too, being like in my life and having a father. But then he was like, he fell in love with me. And it was very, 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 very weird and scary. And my family had to save me. And that honestly put me basically over the deep end whenever I went through that. But then that was my breaking point. And that was totally my breaking point. But then, I started like just doing yoga all the time, and just really getting into that. But then eventually I wasn't able to really do that as much because the sickness I started developing new symptoms. And then it was like all of a sudden dislocating in joints, popping joints, and like my elbow going out of place. And like all of a sudden, like I couldn't use my shoulder for like a year and a half, like severe pain. So during this time, though, I started, let me rewind. I always lived paycheck to paycheck, too, because I had so much medical debt that I couldn't keep up with. So, even though I was great at all of my jobs, like, let's say I made like $50,000 a year. That's not like a crazy amount or anything. And when you have a medical debt, that's really, really horrible. So during this whole time, I did take a transition. I took a job that was a commission-based job doing medical software sales, dental software sales. And the reason why I'm even mentioning this is because this is going to answer that question. I didn't know anything about meditation. I didn't know what a positive affirmation was. Never heard of that before. My family made me believe that meditation was basically the devil, And, during this time I took this sales job. It was commission-based. And it was really, really stressful because it was phone sales. I didn't have my looks or anything like that to help. It was phone sales. And they recorded our calls, and they gave you a script, and they put the fear in you, like, you have to stick to this script. And I sounded like a damn robot, and like I was horrible, and I was so stressed out because they made such a big deal of like when you get a deal, like the manager yells your name, like 300, 400 people in the department, like all cheer for you, and then you go and hit a loud gong, and like that was happening all around me all throughout my day, left and right. Which was so disheartening because it wasn't happening for me, and it wasn't like, and the base was 20,000, so like that's nothing. So I was stressed out of my mind, but I was giving myself like 6 months in the job because I knew it was going to be a learning curve, and I knew there were people making good money there, and so I was like, if they can do it, I can do this. And so during this time, everything changed because I was gifted a book called Ask and It Is Given by Jerry and Esther Hicks. It's like an Abraham Hicks book. And it really taught me meditation, affirmations, and opened my mind up to things. I'd watched The Secret, and really started to play with this stuff. Now, I will tell you that, like, because the way that I was raised, I was like, this is hocus pocus. Like, I didn't believe in it, really. But I also knew that I had nothing to lose. Like, if there was a 1% chance that this stuff worked and could change my life, then so be it. And so what I did is I started doing meditations every single morning, guided ones on abundance, and followed by I would play affirmations that were on abundance, on prosperity, on confidence, success. And I would say them. It was so cheesy. I would say them out loud as I heard them. And then I would write my, what I was grateful for every day, and then I would write my affirmations in the present tense every single day on my journal. And at night I would fall asleep to like abundance hypnosis, things like that. And then at my cubicle at work, we had a plexiglass cubicle, and so with a dry erase marker I would write, I am, and this is so lies, but I would write, I am consistently making six figures. Deals come to me easily and effortlessly. Deals come to me in expected and unexpected ways. I am a money magnet, and so it is. I mean, people probably thought I was cuckoo or a witch. I don't know. But like, I was like all in, like I'm doing this. And I believed, I started to believe like that it could work, and which was a huge piece of it. Because I'm a firm believer that we create with our thoughts and feelings. And and then I had a vision board, like at my cubicle, I had like the house that I wanted, like the things that like I was working towards. I had them in my little cubicle where I could see them. But I did this every day. The other thing was the action that I took. So the office hours where you work from 8:15 till 5:15. And I'm talking like it was a huge warehouse. There was like, it was a ton of people. There was like 3,000, maybe a little over total employees, but like it was a big building, I don't know how many people were in that building, but it was big. And I would go in because they would allow it. I would just use my badge, and there would be the janitor in there, and I would go in at 6:30 in the morning and stay until like 8:30 at night, and I would just listen and play like all the top reps calls, and I would listen to them. And I started to realize, okay, the script's a guide. I can use my personality and yada yada. But anyway, during this time, so like the first probably 4 months that I was at that job, I don't even know if I closed one deal. I don't think I did. Like I was terrible. I was not good. If I closed, it wasn't that many. My manager had to close it for me. I definitely went like a huge, dry streak in that first 4 months, to the point where I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I was like, no, that goes against everything that I'm learning. And so I really started just really going deep with the meditation and the affirmations and with the writing. And literally like a month later, everything changed. And I was killing it. And I was a top person. I was always like number 1, number 2, always. And what I can say is, even though I didn't close anything like the first 4 months of that year, by the end of that year, I made almost $200,000, and I was the number 1 person. I was always the top person, at the company, got President's Club, and I was just like, wow, this stuff works. And because of that, long way to answer your question, but I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, if this can do this in this area of my life, like, because then I just started making more and more money. I was like, okay, like, where's an area that I can, like, use this stuff now? And I'm like, well, my dating life, down the toilet. And again, it sounds so cheesy, but you know what? I don't care. It works. So whatever. But I started writing down. I did a couple things. I wrote down every day in my journal, I am so happy and grateful now that I have my husband, and so it is. And the other thing that I did, which sounds so crazy, is I went to the store and bought pink roses. I'm all about doing like little rituals and things, like all about it.
And intentions.
Yeah, no. So I got these pink roses. I hung them upside down, like on my windowsill, so they would dry. And then once they were dried, I opened up my front door and I would peel off, I would tear like a petal at a time off the roses. And as I did, I would throw them out the door and say, I am so happy and grateful now that I have my husband. And so it is. And again, I don't even think it was a month. I think it was less than a month. I don't think it took long at all. And David and I had like a divine, I don't even know to this day how to explain it. It was just divine intervention. We were friends for a couple years and we worked together. And I never would have thought that we were going to date, and it was definitely something out of this world that happened one night. And I believe that I attracted you because I started to put my focus on these things and trick my subconscious mind into believing that I have those things. And that even leads me into ayahuasca. So again, once I realized that I had, attracted you and this stuff works, I started using my affirmations towards healing. And then that's when I attracted things that helped me in that area as well.
Yep. So basically I'm your manifestation.
Basically.
But yeah, that was crazy. On a side note there, we basically fell in love overnight, engaged in 2 months, married in 7 months, which everyone thought we were crazy, but more than 2 years later, it's great. Yeah. But anyway, so great. We got to that part. So at this point, we're dating, and I'm still going to be interviewing her in this process. This is a little unique because we're married. I'm married to the interviewee here, but we're dating. And during this time, there's just still all these horrible physical symptoms. There's this constant anxiety, still on the Xanax for 20 years now. So what we did, I knew in my heart that I never have liked pharmaceuticals, and I knew they weren't good. And I knew we had to at least wean her off of those to start. We had no clue how we were going to heal her. We were just still trying. We spent ridiculous thousands on Western medicine and even thousands more on Eastern medicine. We tried everything and nothing was. We get little
tried every kind of diet out there.
Every kind of. Well, let me back up for a second. So we weaned her off of Xanax naturally. We weaned her off, which was very difficult, but we did it naturally. But what we didn't realize was the Xanax was masking her feeling all of the feelings of the repressed stuff that was going on. So I'm going to try and get this timeline right. Once the Xanax was gone, there was this bouts of rage that would come up. And it was so interesting because I know the real Maegen, but what we were wondering where this anger and this rage was coming from. Well, it was this, we learned later. I'm not going to jump too far ahead here, but just to explain that part, Xanax, all that crap does is subdue everything from coming up. It doesn't let you feel the feelings. So she had to take it to get through her day to survive and trying to live a normal life, but it was not letting you feel any of those feelings of those years. Decades of suppressed trauma was still built up in there. So it started to have these little bouts of anger and rage that came up because the Xanax was gone and no longer suppressing it. Now, going forward, we tried every freaking diet under the sun. All meat diet, no meat diet, vegan, vegetarian.
For 20 years, I was gluten, dairy, and soy free.
Yeah, everything made you like distend, which was crazy. We tried so many different diagnoses, spent tens of thousands on doctors, and literally nothing was working. We couldn't figure out what.
I mean, I even tried energy healers. There was a couple times that I tried energy healing. They're balancing my chakras, but I honestly didn't even notice anything from those energy healers either.
Which is tough. And then, as we grew as a husband and wife, we started getting more and more into our daily routine, our routine of meditation, our routine of affirmations, prayer, writing, and we started to really tap into our divine guidance and signs. And we started to get signs that were starting to push us towards this incredibly powerful plant called ayahuasca, which we didn't know a lot about. We just heard about from friends, and we started studying ayahuasca. And can you tell us how that came about and what your thoughts are, what your thoughts were about it, and what is it that made you decide, I'm going to give this a shot?
Yeah, well, I had heard of it through you, like years before we ever even did it. At that time we had tried doing healing via psychedelics. We dabbled with LSD and mushrooms, but we had the intention of using it for healing. But we also learned things in this process. Moderation is everything. It definitely served its purpose. There were times that were great, but there were times that weren't, that I definitely realized that I definitely had suppressed trauma that needed to be healed. And what finally, I say that because I remember you mentioning ayahuasca during those times. But then, we didn't mess with that stuff, anymore. We tested those waters, and then, time went on, and I was getting worse and worse, like when you hit on saying like there was these bouts of rage, it was the craziest thing for me because I was so self-aware. Like, I would literally be like, oh my gosh, why am I acting this way? And the anxiety and the PTSD would be so bad, but like I couldn't control it, which was crazy. It was almost like something else was in me acting this way. And like, I literally could not control it. And it was just becoming debilitating. And the nail biting was getting way worse. The insomnia was way worse. And so, you know, all these things, you know, I even think that Xanax had helped with me being intimate, you know, because that's definitely an area that I had always had trouble with as well. And so, ayahuasca, I guess it came about because, you know, you had mentioned it early on and I just completely shut it out. I was like, no, it's dangerous. There's people that have died. There's no way. End of story, period. And years went by. And then I started, like I said, I started doing affirmations on healing. I am so happy and grateful now that I am completely healed, and so it is, and I am healthy, whole, and complete, and I sleep, 8 hours a night, and all these things, like just started write affirmations about healing. And it seemed like in no time that we had a friend that had mentioned ayahuasca to you. And at that point, I was terrified of doing it, but I knew that I needed healing. So it was like, I have to do it.
Yep. And so we took the plunge. We went over there. We went to the ceremony, and we'll have to do another episode as I see where we have about 4.5 minutes left. So to kind of tie this up, we took the plunge into ayahuasca, and it was like a holy sci-fi movie. It was incredibly scary but beautiful. And, again, we'll have to do another episode here as we only have about, it looks like 4 minutes left on here. So to try and hit the high points of it, literally, and I would love to hear your version, but as watching you and being there with you through this process, it was so beautiful and scary, but so beautiful to see how this incredible plant medicine truly made you go within yourself, process and feel all that trauma. It was like 10 years of therapy in one night. I know that sounds extreme, but I don't know how else to do it. If you can sum it up in 3 minutes, tell me your experience at ayahuasca.
I mean, it was terrifying. It felt like an exorcism. It was horrible. It was horrible. Like, the process was horrible. I remember, during it, I was just like, I just want to survive this. Like, I was just felt half alive. It was so intense, which, yes, we'll have to do another episode on that. I just wanted it to end, and I was just like, I'm never doing this again. And the next day, I was a different person, though.
Yeah, and I think that's the key of it. As tough as it was, it's might not be that tough for everyone. I had a different experience. I didn't have the trauma, but I had a very divine, kind of beautiful clarity, purpose experience. As tough as it was for her, she woke up the next day she's the same person, but her suppressed trauma was gone.
The nail biting was gone. I've not bitten my nails since that day, which is insane. I've done it my whole life. The PTSD's gone. The anxiety in my chest is gone. The popping joints, the dislocating joints, it's all gone. I mean, I would say that I got 80% healing that night. Yeah, I still have insomnia. There's still some other things. I've even done, what's crazy, real quick, I'll hit on this. I did sleep studies, and they showed that my brain frequencies indicated that I was in significant pain, but it was emotional pain, But yeah, I mean, it's something that it's like an onion. It peels the layers. And so I'm definitely, even though I'm terrified of ayahuasca, I am going back for round 2
in April,
for, or whenever it is. But, because I just have the intention of healing, the insomnia, or healing the intimacy and things of that nature. But it is a very powerful plant medicine. It's definitely not a recreational drug, and you definitely should be called to it. But it's scary, and like you said, it's beautiful.
Absolutely. And we only have 1 minute, about 1:20 left. So our next episode, I want to do a part 2 of this, going into more about the ayahuasca ceremony. And I want to go into a bit about my addiction, how I healed my addiction, what I had issues with drinking in my past, through responsible psychedelic usage, as well as meditation, affirmations, and what ended up me growing a pretty powerful relationship with my creator, thanks to my incredible wife. But we'll do part 2 here shortly on ayahuasca, that ceremony a little more in detail. But at the end of the day, she healed. At the end of the day, she healed, and it was a different 80% completely healed of 30 plus years of trauma in one night. If I didn't see it myself, it would be hard for me to believe it. So it was beautiful.
Yeah, and I just want to say thanks for listening.
Yes.
And have a great night and happy healing.
Happy healing, everyone. We can't wait to have a lot more conversations, dive into healing, and help heal the world one mindset, one soul at a time. Happy healing. We have love for every one of you.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.